Guys, today we're going to be going over exotic class items and prismatic. This is arguably the biggest change coming to the final shape, especially exotic class items, as they're essentially going to be these class items that allows us to merge the main aspects of exotics together. Now with this new subclass, we're also getting the new transcendent ability, as well as new aspect combinations, and this opens a ton of build variety. Now if you're looking for timestamps, feel free to check those out below. With that being said, this is a pre-launch build, meaning there may be a potential for some of these things to change. However, we'll be covering these things even in more depth with the launch of the final shape. Now, before we can really start diving into exotic class items and prismatic, we need to talk about transcendence first. Here in the prismatic subclass menu, you can actually read the transcendent description. It says achieve harmony by dealing damage with light and dark damage types in equal measure, or by applying subclass buffs to your allies. Kinetic damage generates both light and dark energy. While transcendence is active, your grenade is replaced by a unique prismatic grenade that deals both light and dark damage. Dealing melee damage while transcendent greatly increases your grenade energy regeneration, and vice versa. Defeating targets while transcendent extends its duration. So let's just jump straight into how this works. To build the meters, you can do so with weapons or abilities. Here you can see I'm using Striga, which is a kinetic weapon, so we're making progress towards each meter at the same time. Now what's interesting is how kills don't really increase gains. It's very much just about you dealing damage. Now if you want to fast track your way to transcendence, you'll definitely want to focus on using a specific light or dark damage type. For instance, tossing a storm grenade here got me a good 30% of my light transcendence bar in 2 hits. Then using a stasis shuriken gave us similar amounts when just hitting a few thrall. Now, as far as the keybind for this, I think initially it might have been B or V for me. I ended up changing it to Q. I'm not quite sure what that keybind is on controller. We had some questions about it though. But that's it, guys. You have these bars come together. It'll line up as a solid bar similar to your super, pop your pose, and then you'll see your grenade change. Now it will change to your class's prismatic grenade. You'll also notice all of your other abilities begin to start regenerating faster. Now at first, it's actually kind of slow. This is not a passive thing. This is about how many inputs you can get out at once. You need to remember that dealing damage with your grenades and your melees increase the opposite abilities regeneration. Here you can see after we use some arcane needles, our grenades start to come back very quickly. Then after we chuck it, the same thing happens to our melee charges. But what's happening simultaneously is that our transcendence meter is draining. Now kills while transcendent will extend this, kind of like how kills refund super meters with some exotics. Now at first, these are large chunks of the meter, like bringing me from 80% of our meter back to full. But as time goes on, you start to see diminishing returns. Now after we've been transcendent for about 30 seconds, kills grant what looks to be less than 1% of our energy back. But with all the refilling I was able to get, we extended transcendence to upward of 45 seconds. Now outside of ability regeneration, there's one more thing that happens while we're transcendent. We get a stacking 5% damage buff for all of our weapons. Now this isn't anything game breaking, but hey, it is 5%. And yes, it will stack on with your other weapon damage buffs. Now besides all of this, you can make use of our Prismatic Fragments to get some more functionality of being transcendent. We're going to cover that later in the video. Again, timestamps below. Now that we know what transcendence is though, let's dive into each of our prismatic subclasses, starting with our warlocks. Looking at our abilities, the supers we have access to are Storm Trance, Winter's Wrath, Cataclysm Nova Bomb, Needle Storm, and the new Song of Flame Solar Warlock super. Now of these, we're going to be talking about Nova Bomb and Winter's Wrath. If you're curious about Song of Flame, you can check out our other video guys where we broke down all of the new supers and aspects. Now after supers, we've got all of the Warlock class abilities, and they're all available immediately. These are Healing, Empowering Rift, and Phoenix Dive. Then next we have our melee options, which comprise of Arcane Needle, Penumbral Blast, Pocket Singularity, Incinerator Snap, and Chain Lightning. Now we'll have Penumbral Blast and Pocket Singularity to start with. Then onto our grenades, we have Threadling Grenade, Vortex Grenade, which is one we're going to start with, Healing Grenade, Storm Grenade, Cold Snap, which is the other starter, and then of course our Prismatic Grenade. Now our Prismatic Grenade here on Warlock is called Freezing Singularity. It states, throw a mass of void energy in stasis matter. On impact, it deploys a miniature black hole orbited by a halo of slowing ice. After a short duration, the black hole implodes, suppressing and dealing heavy damage to all nearby targets. Now, as you can see here, guys, it's pretty potent. This honestly may be my favorite grenade out of all of them. It's got a good ease of use. It acts like a normal vortex grenade where it pulls things in, and after a bit, all the stasis stuff gets sucked into the middle where it explodes. And it lasts quite a long time, so really good for locking down areas or just dealing chunk damage to bosses. Now, continuing with our other prismatic abilities, we have our suite of aspects with one coming from each existing subclass. Now, some of these have had their functionality changed just slightly, because if it was translated one-to-one from our normal subclasses, they just wouldn't synergize. So here on Warlocks, we have Feed the Void. This has been changed, as the normal version of this requires to get Void ability kills. Now though, it will grant you Devour on any ability kill. Then next to Devour, Prismatic Warlock has access to Lightning Surge, giving us that sliding blink melee. Blink Watcher is also present here, giving us those stasis turrets. Weaver's Call is also here, so that our class abilities will spawn Threadlings, as well as giving any strand kills the chance to spawn one. And then finally, our new aspect, Hellion, which is essentially a solar orb buddy. Very, very good. And yes, you can pair it with other souls. You can literally have an Arc Soul and a solar buddy together. Now that's everything on the Prismatic Warlock minus the fragments. The last piece of our kit is actually the exotic class item. This one is called Solipsism. Now guys, we got to try out a number of different combinations, some more extensively than others. But the way Bungie is going about balancing exotic class items is that whatever rolls in column 1 stays in column 1, and the same for column 2. So if you're looking at things like Spirit of Star Eater and Spirit of Syntheseps, you cannot get those two together on the same class item. But you can see a lot of different things that can synergize fantastically. I did a combination of Spirit of Necrotic with Spirit of the Claw to give me another melee, and essentially just ran around and lightning surge things over and over. So as potent as Prismatic is going to be in week 1, it's going to get even deadlier in week 2 when we get access to these exotic class items, as they truly are going to change everything. Now moving on to our Titans. Titans, your starting super options will be Blade Fury, as well as Thunder Crash. Then you're also going to have access to Hammer of Soul, Glacial Quake, and our brand new Void super called Twilight Arsenal, which is very good. And yes, we will be doing super versus super damage next week when we get all of these unlocked. Now next up for class abilities. Pretty standard stuff here. You've got both Towering and Rally Barricade, but Thruster, which was previously exclusive only to Arc, is also present here. Now next up for our melees, we start off with Thunderclap and Frenzy Blade. But we also have Shield Throw, Hammer Strike, and Shiver Strike. For grenades, you'll be starting off with Pulse Grenades and Shackle Grenades. Then we'll gain access to Suppressor Grenades, Thermite Grenades, as well as Glacier Grenades. Now there's one more grenade, and that is of course your Prismatic Grenade. When casting Transcendence, you'll have access to the grenade called Electrified Snare, which reads, throw an explosive device energized with Strand Matter and Arc Energy that detonates in a supercharged suspending burst. Now the suspended target takes heavy damage over time and chains Jolt Lightning to any nearby targets. Now guys, in PvP, you're gonna love this grenade. It'll first explode into this suspending burst, which of course can stun things like Unstoppable Champions, although I didn't get to try that out myself, but I'm sure it can. But really, it's just great for locking enemies up, essentially rendering them immobile. Then after a few seconds, that jolting effect will go off, and at least on the Imuna here, was killing the red bars trapped by the suspend. But otherwise, while they're still suspended, you can use your weapon or abilities to finish them off. Now this grenade has a pretty large radius. There's one time where I completely missed a group of enemies, and as you can see guys, it still went off, still got the suspend off, and what it made lack in terms of damage in comparison to the Warlock grenade, it definitely makes up for it in terms of utility. Now for our Titan aspects. Our Prismatic subclass starts off with Knockout and Diamond Lance, with Diamond Lance getting changed here with Prismatic. It now reads, shatter or defeating targets with abilities or stasis weapons creates a stasis lance, which you can then pick up and throw, which will freeze targets, or you can slam it and freeze targets in a small area. Now previously, this was locked only to stasis abilities, but it now works with any ability on Prismatic. We also have Drinker's Lash, which works the same, but they make the distinction here that it's restricted to barricades. Now, unfortunately, guys, thrusters do not work here. Believe me, I tried. Then we have the new Unbreakable aspect and Consecration. Unbreakable being the ability to essentially consume your grenade, but like block things. It's all right. Consecration, though, always a good one. Now, there, of course, is a ton of different options you can go when it comes to build crafting here. But I gotta say, guys, my second day when we got to play with this, I broke broke out a nasty combination for my exotic class item, Stoicism. I combined the power of Spirit of the Abians with Spirit of the Horn, that being Capri's Horn. And it was potent, guys. Essentially, every time I popped my barricade, I would suspend everything in front of me. I would hit him with a wave of flames. The synergy here was beautiful. Now, finally, we have our Hunters. Now, the two supers you can use to start with include the Marksman Golden Gun and the Silence and Squall super. Then you unlock Storm's Edge, which is the new Arc super, Deadfall Shadow Shot, and Silk Strike. Then for our class ability, we get the usual dodges alongside Acrobat's Dodge. Now, all three of these will be available from the start. For your melees, you have Withering Blade and Knife Trick to start with. Then you'll eventually get access to Snare Bomb, Combination Blow, and Threaded Spike as your other options. Then for our grenades, we've got Grapple, Magnetic Grenade, Arc Bow Grenade, Dustfill Grenades, and Swarm Grenades, with Dustfill and Swarm Grenades being our starting grenades. Then lastly, we have our aspects. Our starting aspects are Winter Shroud and Stylish Executioner. Now, Stylish Executioner has changed just a bit. It now reads, defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility. Now, let me just say, guys, this is extremely potent. It synergizes with so many other things. For instance, I was pairing this with the other aspect, the new one, Ascension, and every time I would use it, it would cause that jolt effect. Then upon getting a kill, it would turn me invisible. It was very strong. And if I was rocking this with Gerfalcons when I came out of it, I was applying Volatile with my Void weapons. Now, our other aspects include Threaded Spectre, as well as Gunpowder Gamble. Now, Gunpowder Gamble has also changed a bit here. It now states that it gets stacks off of any ability kill or kills with elemental debuff damage. Now, this takes us to our exotic class item for Hunters, Essentialism. Now, as you see here, we have access to a lot of the general exotics, but also some specific to Hunters. Spirit of Assassin, Spirit of the Dragon, Spirit of Galanor, Spirit of Foe Tracer, Spirit of Caliban, which we got to play with, Spirit of Renewal. Then we have Spirit of Star Eater in that final column, Spirit of Surturagni, Spirit of Gerfalcon, Spirit of the Liar, Spirit of the Wormhusk, and Spirit of the Coyote. Now, the final piece of our prismatic suite is, of course, our fragments. There are 21 total fragments, which is way more than our other subclasses. But what's also very unique with prismatic and our build crafting going forward is that every aspect has 3 fragment slots. The only aspects with 2 slots are Knockout, Stylish Executioner, and Feed the Void. Everything else either already has 3 slots like Diamond Lance, or it has been up to 3 slots. And I think this is very important to note because as we go through these, you'll notice that there are very few fragments that increase our ability regeneration. Most of these will either be utility focused or have something to do with transcendence. But no lie, guys, subclasses like Strand would be busted if we could rock 6 fragments. Prismatic, however, for the most part, feels pretty balanced, despite how many fragment slots you have available. Now let's take a look at these fragments. We have Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generate an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. Now what's so beautiful about this, guys, is this will directly synergize with all of our brave arsenal weapons with that origin trait Indomitability. Now, Facet of Blessing. Melee final blows start health regeneration, while Transcendent, melee final blows start health regeneration for you and nearby allies. Facet of Bravery. Defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds to your void weapons. Defeating targets with power melee final blows grants unraveling rounds to your strand weapons. A very powerful fragment right here, guys. Considering you're going to be rocking both light and darkness weapon types, dude, rock a strand weapon, rock a void weapon, and then go ham with both volatile and unraveling. Facet of Command. Freezing or suppressing a target reloads your equipped weapons and increases weapon stability, as well as aim assist and airborne effectiveness. Defeating frozen or suppressed targets creates a stasis shard or a void breach. And Facet of Command is something that can dip not only into your base abilities, but also into your prismatic grenades, especially the Warlock grenade. Facet of Courage. Your arc, solar, and void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. Now, Facet of Dawn. Power melee hits against targets makes you radiant. Power melee final blows makes both you and nearby allies radiant. Facet of Defiance. Finishers create a detonation that either jolts, scorches, slows, severs, or makes targets volatile, based on the damage type of your equipped super. Guys, that is so good. You could double up with Defiance with things like Fellwinter's, Severance, and Closure. You can imagine something like Fellwinter going in, getting the finish off, weakening enemies, and then turning around, jolting all of them. Facet of Devotion. Defeating targets afflicted with stasis or strand debuffs grants bonus light transcendence energy. Facet of Dominance. Your void grenades weakens targets and your arc grenades jolt targets. Facet of Generosity. Defeating targets while transcendent creates orbs of power for your allies. Facet of Grace. Damaging targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus transcendence energy. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus transcendence energy. I personally think if you're going to be rocking kinetic weapons, this fragment right here is going to be a necessity. Yes, it does feed into both of your bars, but you're going to need this fragment, guys. Really, really. So if you're rocking things like Wither Horde, Izanagi, Microcosm, or a variety of other kinetic weapons, this right here is going to be your go-to fragment. Now, Facet of Honor. Collecting an elemental pickup or destroying a tangle grants transcendence energy of the same type. That's really good right there, guys, considering some elemental pickups are way more plentiful than others. Like stasis shards, if you're doing a stasis build, they're going to be everywhere. Fire sprites are also a pretty easy one to spawn in. Depending on how much we get to our transcendent energy bars, Facet of Honor may be S tier. Then we have Facet of Hope. This is a starting fragment. While you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. I was actually rocking this with Ascension, and every time I would go Amplified, this would feed back into my class ability, which essentially just allowed me to do my Ascension troll over and over. Then we have Facet of Justice. This is another starting one. While Transcendent, your ability final blows explode. Facet of Mending. Grenade final blows cure you. Transcendent grenade final blows increase the strength of the effect. I love that it also synergizes with that Transcendent grenade. And that's really the thing that we're gonna have to test out extensively here, is how much of this overlaps to our prismatic grenades. Now, Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. Listen, I have died while Transcendent. It sucks. You do all this work, you get the bar, you activate Transcendent, and then you just die. It's the equivalent of dying with your super, but it can definitely happen. Facet of Protection, at least in GM content, maybe even like day one raids, might be a necessity for us. Facet of Purpose. This is a starting fragment. Picking up an Aura Power grants either Amplifying, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield based on the damage type of your equipped super. Again, you notice a lot of these fragments are tied to your super type. Somebody was asking the other day, what about Chromatic Fire? What's that going to be tied to? Most likely it's going to be your super. Now, Facet of Ruin. This is another starting fragment. Increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or a frozen target, and increases the area of effect of solar ignitions. Now, this is one that's going to synergize with a lot of different things, so whether it's Dragon's Breath or any weapon that's applying Scorch to reach an ignition, but also the Hunter Prismatic Grenade, which has that solar cyclone that emits Scorch and of course will cause an ignition. Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. So pretty much the counter to the fragment that we read earlier. And then Facet of Solitude. Landing rapid precision hits amidst a severing blast from the targets. While Transcendent, the severing blast is bigger. Now, you've probably noticed there's just not a lot of fragments that commit to a single verb, and that's pretty much what Prismatic is. You get a little bit of everything. That's why I was saying it's kind of a jack of all trades thing. But if Prismatic lacks for you initially, it's in week 2 when things really open up. I know we slightly touched on the exotic class items, but now we're gonna dive into each and every single one of them. We're gonna talk about what the main purpose of each one of these spirits is, but also what's being left off. Let's start with our column 1 perks for Warlocks. Now, I wanna mention a lot of these are actually spread out across all classes. So for instance, Spirit of the Assassin is present for Warlocks, Hunters, and Titan, all in column 1. Now keep in mind, guys, this is the spirit of the exotic, not the whole exotic. So for instance, Spirit of the Assassin states that finishers and power melee final blows grants invisibility. This does not restore a portion of health and shields from power melees or finisher final blows. Also, finishers and final blows against more powerful targets does not increase the duration of invisibility and the amount of health and shields restored. So keep in mind, guys, this is the spirit of the exotic. Bungie literally just takes one piece of it and puts it here. Now, Spirit of Inmost Light. Using an ability empowers the other 2 abilities, granting them improved energy regeneration. Now, what's left off right here is that the melees and grenades doing the extra damage. That's not here. Also, things like barricades having more hit points for our Titans. This is purely for amping our ability regeneration. Then we have Spirit of Ophidian. This one gives you the main purpose that I know many of us use Ophidians for: your weapons ready very quickly. What you don't get is you don't get that benefit to airborne effectiveness, and you also don't get that increase in reload speed. Now, Spirit of the Stag. Your Rift provides damage reduction to allied guardians standing in it. However, it does not grant Rift energy when you are critically wounded, and it does not create a healing Rift on your corpse when you die. Spirit of Filaments. Casting an empowering Rift will grant you Devour. Notice what's being left off here. This does not allow damage dealt by you and your allies within your empowering Rift to disrupt combatants. Now, Spirit of Necrotic. This was actually one we rocked, but damaging combatants with your melee melee poisons them, and defeating a poison enemy spreads the condition. And notice what's being left off. The poison damage does not increase over time. It also doesn't provide the moderate benefit to airborne effectiveness stat of weapons of sorrow, but let's be real. You're using Spirit of Necrotic because you're trying to synergize with those weapons of sorrow and spreading that poison damage, which of course you're able to do. But yes, we will have to sit there and do a side-by-side comparison between Spirit of Necrotic and just base Necrotic. Now, Spirit of Osmomancy. Your grenades recharge quicker on hits. The seekers spawned from Cold Snaps travel further. The main thing left off on this one, Cold Snap grenades do not have an additional charge. Now, Spirit of Apotheosis. Temporarily gain greatly increased melee and grenade regeneration after your super ends. Now, this does not immediately regenerate health, melee, grenade, and rift energy for you and nearby allies when you activate your super. Now that is column 1 on Warlocks. The main thing I'm trying to show you right now, guys, is that there's still going to be a reason to use exotics, especially if you're trying to get the entire benefit of that exotic. Now column 2, we have Spirit of the Star Eater. While your super energy is full, picking up an aura of power overcharges your super, granting it bonus damage. Now what's being left off here is that it does not grant additional super energy from orbs of power. It also does not grant a burst of healing when casting super. Also, it does not grant an overshield when at max stacks. Granted, I'm sure many people are going to just overlook that, especially for my hunters that are going to rock Spirit of Galanor with Star Eater. It's going to be disgusting, man. Spirit of Syntheseps. Improve melee damage when you're surrounded. Now, what you don't get is the increased super damage. It also doesn't improve your handling and reload speed when you're surrounded, a buff that Bungie added not that long ago. Now, Spirit of Verity. Weapon final blows with a damage type matching your grenade grant a stacking grenade damage bonus. The big thing here is that death throws will not be granting grenade energy. It also doesn't allow nearby allies to gain increased grenade regeneration for a short time after you throw that grenade with death throws. Spirit of Vesper. Wrists periodically release arc shockwaves. And what you don't get here is that those shockwave final blows don't create that arc explosion. They also don't blind enemies. And it also doesn't allow rifts to recharge faster when surrounded by targets. Now, what I'm really hoping for, because that's like a big piece of Vesper that's being left off, I'm hoping that some of these things will still be included, and that's why we're gonna have to sit down and test every single one of them. But at the same time, this is Bungie's way of balancing this stuff. Now, Spirit of Harmony. Final blows with weapons that have a damage type matching your super's element grant you super energy. The biggest piece of Harmony is literally left off here. That being, it does not grant a weapon damage bonus when your super is full. Spirit of Starfire. Grenades recharge from empowered weapon damage. The empowered weapon final blows grant more energy. What it doesn't give you is kind of like Osmomancy. You don't get that additional fusion grenade charge. Also, defeating targets with the fusion grenade does not grant rift energy, which is a big piece. Spirit of the Swarm. This one hurt, man. Destroying a tangle spawns a threadling. Dude, honestly, I wish Bungie would have kept the second part and made that the primary part of Spirit of the Swarm. And that's where threadlings unravel targets that they damage. That right there, to me, is the biggest selling point to Spirit of the Swarm. Now, Spirit of the Claw. Gain an additional melee charge. What it loses is the heavy-handed mod that's intrinsic to claws. At the same time, this is fantastic for spamming those melees. I was literally using that with Spirit of Necrotic and just running around doing lightning surges over and over. Now, next we have our Titans. Now, we already covered Spirit of Assassin, Spirit of Inmost Light, and Spirit of Ophidian. These, of course, are present in that first column. But we have Spirit of Severance. Power melee or finisher final blows unleash a damaging explosion. Now, what this doesn't allow is for finishers and power melee final blows against more powerful targets to increase the radius and damage of that explosion. Still gonna be good, but yeah, doesn't include those parts. Spirit of Hoarfrost. Your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals that slows nearby targets when created. The only thing you lose out on this one is that standing behind the barricade will not grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. But hell, guys, we use Spirit of Hoarfrost just for the stasis wall. Spirit of Eternal Warrior. Gain a damage bonus for weapons matching your super's element when your super ends. Now, what you don't get is the overshield when activating Fist of Havoc. However, at the same time, Eternal Warrior is not tied to just your arc super. Now, Spirit of the Abians. We were actually using this. Fantastic. It improves Dringer's Lash. Dringer's Lash projectiles track targets more aggressively and travel further. The one thing you do lose on this is free Woven Mail. Abian Leap, of course, gives you Woven Mail when you suspend targets. You don't get that, and that was something I did notice. But man, when you do Abian with Kepri's Horn, it's disgusting. Now, Spirit of the Bear. Move faster while guarding with the Unbreakable Shield. Damage blocked with Unbreakable is converted to super energy. Now, things that are left off here. You do not move faster while guarding with the Sentinel Shield. Also, it doesn't say anything about the guard damage converting to super energy when the super ends. So I'm not really sure how this is going to play out. Understand, Prismatic does not have Banner Shield. And this, of course, is not going to apply to Twilight Arsenal. So the point I'm trying to make is, if If you're going to use Ursa Furiosa, in my opinion, you're going to want to still rock Void 3.0. Now, moving on to the second column, we have Spirit of Star Eater still, Spirit of Syntheseps, and Spirit of Verity, which we already covered. But moving on, we have Spirit of Contact. Damaging a target with a powered melee causes all nearby enemies to suffer lightning strikes and become jolted. Now, guys, this is really good. It's not tied to any specific melee. It's any power melee will cause this. Now, of course, what it doesn't give you is that restoration of melee energy when defeating targets with Thunderclap. Also, being amplified does not increase the damage of the lightning strikes. The point is, though, you can run in there with Frenzy Blade and literally just run around, just damaging the targets and hitting them with lightning strikes and jolting them. Now, Spirit of Scars. Final blows with weapons that have a damage time matching your super's elements creates a burst of healing around you that grants allies restoration. Again, just like the fragments above, things are tied to your super. Now, you do not get the aura providing overshields to you and nearby allies after reviving or being revived, which is a big selling point to Precious Scars. Now, Spirit of the Horn. Your barricade unleashes a blast of solar energy that scorches targets. Now, this does not allow for solar final blows to then recharge your barricade. But no lie, guys, I'll take the trade-off. The Leap Horn combo, very nice. Now, Spirit of Alpha Lupi generates a healing pulse when Barricade is activated. Now, this does not generate additional orbs of power from your super. Still really good though, especially if you want to pair this with Spirit of Abiance. Then Spirit of the Armatarium. Gain an additional grenade charge. What it does lose out on though is the built-in firepower mod. The question I have with Armatarium, does this apply at all to our prismatic grenades when we become transcendent? I would assume it wouldn't, but we'll test it nonetheless. Now, moving on to Hunters. Again, the same here, Spirit of the Assassin, Spirit of Immortal Light, Spirit of Ophidian, all of those are present here. We also have Spirit of the Dragon in column 1. Using your class ability, reloads all weapons and increase weapon handling speed for a brief time. Now, what's being left off here is that it does not increase movement speed after using your class ability, just kind of a bummer. Now, Spirit of Galanor. Hits and final blows with your super will return super energy after it ends. The main thing that's left off here is that it does not allow for throwing knife final blows to decrease the cooldown of your super, but let's be real. The main selling point is you can use Spirit of Galanor with any super, guys. Any super. And yes, you can double stack this with Spirit of Star Eater. Now, Spirit of the Foe Tracer. Damaging powerful combatants or guardians with an ability grants you a temporary bonus for weapons matching that ability's elements. Foe Tracer is very good, guys, and it's going to be so good on Prismatic. Yes, you will have to jump through some hoops and match things up, but still going to be very nice. What it doesn't give you, though, is that it doesn't create an element of pickup when defeating a target with a weapon matching your subclass. Now, Spirit of Caliban. We were using this with Combination Blow. Power melee final blows trigger an ignition. Now, understand, guys, that is any power melee final blow. I'm literally running around with Combination Blow, hitting enemies and igniting them. The main thing that's being left off here is that it doesn't allow to scorch targets with your melee damage. You also don't gain increased melee regeneration. Now, Spirit of Renewal. Allies inside dust fields take reduced damage, and targets inside the area deal reduced damage. The big thing that's left off on this one is that it does not give dust field grenades that larger effect radius. Now, in column 2, we've got Spirit of Star Eater, Spirit of Syntheseps, Spirit of Verity, all the ones we already covered. Spirit of Certarachne. We actually use this one. Gain Woven Mail when using your grenade. Now, that's completely free. It doesn't give increased flinch resistance while Woven Mail is active, though. But yes, if you were to rock this with Spirit of Renewal, you could throw a Panic Dustfield grenade at your feet. You could grant yourself Woven Mail and Frost Armor, all within a single grenade. Spirit of the Gerfalcon. Your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. The big thing that's left off on this one is that you don't get that damage bonus when finishing an enemy while invisible. You also don't give your nearby allies that reserve overshield or that improved class ability regeneration when defeating a combatant with a finisher while you're invisible. But guys, let's be real. Most of you are probably using Gerfalcons for the volatile rounds. And yes, I was doing Gerfalcons on another build, not even this version, but just regular Gerfalcons with Ascension and Stylish Executioner. And I was constantly going invisible and constantly granting myself volatile rounds. You could literally use Spirit of the Dragon with Spirit of Gerfalcons here, automatically top off your weapons when using your class ability, going invisible with Ascension, coming out of it, and immediately start hitting everything with volatile rounds. Now, Spirit of the Lion. This is another one we got to rock, but dealing damage with a power melee or being hit by a melee attack will allow you to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch. Main thing that's left off here is that it does not heal you when counter punching. But yeah, guys, you can run in there with Spirit of the Liar and Spirit of the Caliban. Go in for the power melee hits, ignite the enemies with Caliban, while also amplifying your melee damage with Spirit of the Lion. Next, we have Spirit of the Wormhusk. Dodging gives a small health and shield bump. Now notice this is the same description as the base exotic. The question is it the same amount of health and the same amount of shield? Now, Spirit of the Coyote. Gain an additional class ability charge. The big thing that's left off here is the Reaper mod that's intrinsic. So guys, I know that was a big one, but that is everything. That is your prismatic overview. That is your fragments. Everything that you're going to be starting with, everything you're eventually going to unlock, and what you're looking at in terms of exotic class items. And again, understand guys, this is Bungie's way of balancing these kits. Personally though, as someone who has played with 2 to 3 very strong prismatic builds, if you're looking at this thinking, man, that looks kind of weak, I promise you, it's potent. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.